and this is the Nonprofit Corner podcast with your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And good morning. This is Dr. Victoria Boyd with the Nonprofit Corner podcast. And once again, I have a fabulous guest, Brett Mayer, and we're kicking off 2024 now. This is actually the first podcast that we're doing in 2024. I'm excited because we have a great guest to kick off the year. Even though we're almost through the end of January, time is just flying too fast. But once again, we're going to be bringing the nonprofit sector education, awareness, and resources. So let me introduce our guest today, Brett Mayer. He's hailing all the way from across the country. I'm out here in Las Vegas and he's in Pennsylvania. Oh, you're in the cold country. Oh.
Yeah, and snow. We've had snow the last week, a bunch
Oh,
of it. So
okay. It's been raining here, but no snow. Thank you. Thank you. So, Brett, I mean, I see that you've been in the nonprofit sector for some time now, but really, what led you to even go into the nonprofit? What's some of your background story here?
yeah, so well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to kick off 2024 here
Mhm.
on your podcast. That's a true honor. But I'm a firm believer. No one wakes up thinking they want to work at nonprofit. You kind of end up there.
You're
You
thrown in there. Yeah.
yeah, my bachelor's degree is actually in music education. And when I
Dancer. That's why you see the dancers. I taught dance, performing arts. Yay!
when I through college, I started working part-time at a YMCA. Long story short, two friends and I started running a theater program. Um, I'm like 3 credits short in my bachelor's degree of having a theater minor.
Okay.
But so working with the YMCA, um, I just enjoyed it. We worked with middle school age children. It was wonderful. And then I graduated college, and my mom was an HR director, and you have to be the adult at that point. And she's like, you need health insurance, you need retirement, you got to get a job, like, all this stuff. And at the time in Pennsylvania, arts programs were being cut, budgets were being cut. I had a bunch of friends lose their um, teaching positions because they were low men on the totem pole when it came to restructuring departments. So it turned out that the Y um, off, offered me a full-time job as a program director. It was a great opportunity. And from there, I just I said, well, I joke when I accepted the position, I said, sure, I'll do this till the teaching thing takes off, and it just never took off. I taught privately for a number of years on the side, but the full time teaching gig never um, happened, and then I just stopped looking because I loved being in the community, being an integral part of that. And building something. So when I worked with the Y, we had just gotten a new CEO when I was offered the full-time job. He was a turnaround CEO. We were bleeding cash. And he came in and, helped. It was exciting to help turn that around. We built a facility, YMCA, attached to an elementary school in my hometown, which was just amazing. And it was, the a unique part that across the country just viewed as interesting. I was getting calls from all over the country asking how we did it. So that was exciting. And then um, I just, really in all of my time, I always say I'm not a fundraiser. I link people to organizations. I'm not always necessarily thinking about the the dollars. I'm thinking, how can we utilize, how can we partner, how can we work together? um, and from that started from those days at the Y. I used to say to my staff all the time, I want a superintendent of schools or a community leader to see an empty building or a space or a need and think, what could Brett and the Y do with this?
Absolutely.
How could Brett and the Y help?
Yes.
And I took that and had a very successful operation at my branch. We went from a $400,000 budget to about a 1.1 million. Then went to a turnaround, another branch that was a for-profit health club that we had purchased to be a YMCA and led that transition. Again, it was losing money. Membership was declining, and the programs weren't strong. And took that and flipped that into a profitable facility and operation. That was about a $1.3 million uh, branch. And then I kind of thought throughout that time, I thought, well, if I want to be a CEO or I want to progress, I need more fundraising experience because, I did a capital campaign and a couple, scholarship fundraising items with the Y, but nothing major. So I had the opportunity to join a national Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, which was just amazing, and work in the Northeast Pennsylvania chapter. Work with some amazing volunteers, amazing families, understand a disease that is just very odd and doesn't affect a ton of people, but affects everyone differently, and affects families differently. And that really set me up to, I led walks and teams and did all of that peer-to-peer fundraising and third-party fundraising, all that stuff before it was cool. Before it was like now it's the buzz thing of fundraising. But before all that, um, got a chance to do that. Ran a top-notch golf tournament with some key volunteers, an amazing Valentine's Gala, where we had the largest net um, in their history that year. And then I thought, okay, I'm an events planner. I'm doing this. I'm working with volunteers and committees, but I still hadn't done major gifts. So I had the opportunity to go to the American Red Cross, where I spent 3 years there, and just really enjoyed building a donor base, building a portfolio. Um, the Red Cross had gone through numerous restructures at that time, and someone in Washington D.C. ran um, a query and said, here's your Excel doc. Here's these people that should be your donors based on address. And they were people they hadn't been contacted in 3 to 5 years. Some people were deceased. I mean, I always tell everyone, you want to feel 3 inches tall, call someone who's had to tell you that their loved one who you're asking for has passed away. So I really just started from scratch and rebuilt that portfolio to $1 million portfolio when I left there, and then worked for Penn State Health and fundraised for healthcare. Now I fundraise for a Pennsylvania Cable Network, which is a nonprofit television network that focuses on Pennsylvania and everything that happens in Pennsylvania. And in addition to that, I do some side consulting. I always joke I fundraised for, I think, almost every cause out there, from healthcare to, except for animals. I've never fundraised for an animal welfare group, unless you want to count Red Cross Pet First Aid CPR. But um,
Okay. Okay. You've got animals on there too.
so it's been a great career. At the end of the day, I just have really enjoyed meeting the people, the impact of the mission, and I think that's the most amazing part of nonprofits is the people. The people that you meet,
Mhm.
and that you get to the experiences that you have through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, you've been out there with almost every cause that there is. But you brought up a few key points that I want to make sure our listeners pay attention to. You talked about you don't you look, and I don't like to call myself a fundraiser. I'm not a fundraiser. I'm a relationship builder, a marketer, which relies on getting awareness and things out there. And I even put together a program called Super Donor, which has nothing to do with money. It's about engagement. It's about, how are you engaging and communicating with these donors that first of all initially don't know anything about you. But then when they do find out about you, how are you going to pull on their heartstrings? And to me, that's all relationship building. That, like you said, you were given a database, but half of them were dead. That means the relationship was not continued. It was, there was no communication there, and that's crucial. It's more important than fundraising, you know,
Mhm.
and nonprofits really need to get out of that money mindset and more into the people mindset. And when you said not really a fundraiser, but yes, you are a fundraiser, but no, you're not really
Well, I think back and I really take this. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I referenced that theater program that two friends and I, and we had to fundraise for that.
I,
It was a
I
program
taught
that
dance for 28 years.
well, but
I know fundraising from the grassroots.
I remember, the three of us driving around in a car, taking that letter, to each business asking for support or, try. And I'm thinking that was really the start of my fundraising career. Like that was like, I had no idea that that's what I was doing at the time, but
Yeah,
that was the start of it. That was the start of building those relationships
absolutely.
and, learning how that process happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And another sidebar, what you just said, you drove to them personally and put a face to the ask. So many organizations want to just put together a stack of letters and just sort of throw them out there, see what lands. I call it casting that wide net and see if you catch any fish in it. It's so much easier if you build a relationship because you know exactly how you stand and where you stand in that relationship. And you have a better opportunity to really talk about your impact, what you're really out there doing, how you're doing it. So, I mean, when you talked about the arts and theaters, have you heard of the Fringe Festival over there in Scotland? In
No,
Edinburgh?
man.
Okay, that's a big high school festival. Well, it's a big arts and theater festival that takes over all of Edinburgh, but they have a high school component where the year we went, over 2,000 schools applied and they only pick um, 18. And the school I was in a semi-performing arts focused school. And we took 18 students to the Fringe Festival in theater and we did Serafina. So just,
Oh,
yeah, it was so much fun. Fabulous. Well, I love my career, but that's also just like you. Back then, I was just trying to provide for the kids. I didn't know anything about the official rules of fundraising. It was like, please just give us money. um,
absolutely. It's funny, something you said resonated with me when you talked about the connections and driving, how I drove to. One of the things, if you can take any positive away from a global pandemic,
yes.
one of my favorite things were people were home. So it blew my mind what organizations were, cutting, and I understand they had to, they were in shutdown mode, they had to cut expenses, but they were letting fundraisers go and cutting back their development departments. The neat part about the pandemic is that you had a real chance. Like when you called a donor,
They're
they would
home.
answer, and they were passionate about wanting to talk because they needed that personal connection. I
Yes.
mean, I talked to doctors and all sorts of people that I would not have normally talked to, and we were talking about what to watch on Netflix or what to watch, in the streaming because it, they were desperate for that like interaction.
Interaction, absolutely. And plus, uh, they weren't in their what I call that work mindset. They could be authentic. You could be authentic and really get to know them on a different level because all of us were suffering through the pandemic and trying to deal with it in different ways. For our foundation, Flange Bird Foundation, we actually had a brick and mortar training center that we had to shut down because we couldn't do live training anymore. But I mean, I had already been in the virtual arena, but when you're forced into it, that pivot for us actually was a foundation saver. It saved our organization because We totally embraced doing virtual training and providing all of our tools and formats in that virtual format. And guess what? People were learning how to use it in the pandemic. And so now it became more familiar and it was more accepted. And so we're all virtual now. So anyway, we are going to take a real quick break and we will be right back with the Nonprofit Corner podcast in just a moment. Grants can be a great funding resource, but is your organization grant ready? Make sure that your organization is ready for either a grant writer or to make those applications with the Logic Model Program Planning Training. Visit lmpp.now.site to learn more about it. And welcome back to the Nonprofit Corner podcast with your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd. And like I said, we have a fabulous guest today. Brett has done it all, seen it all, and he has even helped animals. He claims he hasn't, but he has even helped animals. So we're going to get into the actual topic today. Even though we've sort of touched on it, we're going to dig a little deeper because I really, really, really like the topic. In fact, I was talking to someone that not even in the nonprofit sector, and they were talking about power partners. And it's goes beyond, it's not networking, it's not, referrals and things like that, but power partners where they really take an active role in promoting you. I know in the nonprofit sector, we're not really talking about that, but it is in a line with how can you leverage these collaborations and these relationships? So let's get into, relationships and some of the keys to success of building some of these relationships. What might you want to share about building those keys?
Well, first, I want to say that I think you have to have an as open mind as humanly possible when you're looking at this. I don't see any place where you could be approached by someone in the community and not be able to partner, not figure out how you could work together.
Right.
You know, so many nonprofits are scared of, oh, well, that organization is going to get the funding, or, they're going to get the donors, or they're going to get the, or they're going to get the media. We got to stop worrying about that. And we've got to worry about how are we going to best serve the population that we're looking to serve.
Right.
And how can we do that together? And I think if we, I worked for CEOs who would, every time someone in the community got a check that was not our organization, I would get an email. Why didn't we get this? Or what, why didn't we get this grant? Some of the grants, we didn't even have programs that like, I remember
They
one
don't
was
get it. They look
like
at
not
grants and
even,
start chasing the money.
it wasn't even in the realm of what we were doing. Like it was for small businesses or something. And we're, a nonprofit and whatnot. And it was just,
And I'm going to highlight that point again. That's where educating the leaders. What is a culture of fundraising? What is a culture of evaluation? What is the culture of knowing who you are and making sure that your mission is the compass? Leaders, I mean, I know you have a lot of balls juggling, but you can't think that and I just saw this on LinkedIn, that your fundraisers are magicians. They can't pull money out of this magic bag. I loved it.
yeah, but that's what got me thinking about when you asked me about the topic for today. And I think that really is what I want everyone to take away from this podcast is that there are tons of opportunities. You just have to think outside the box sometimes and think, okay, how can we work with this other organization, or how can we work with this business, or how can we work with these community leaders? It's not a competition. Like it
Right.
does not need to be this big competitive,
Yeah.
I got to jostle to get ahead. We're
Mhm.
all looking to serve and meet a certain mission and population. Let's work together to do that.
Yeah. And it's also thinking outside the box, but not outside of your mission. And
Absolutely.
that's key. I mean, you can be creative. In fact, when I do strategic planning with some groups, I don't start with what is your values? Let's post all of these values on here. Let's start with some innovative strategies. Let's think about, what's out there? What can we as an organization tap into but yet still keep the mission as that compass that maybe we haven't thought about. So I put them into this whole creative. Probably my dance coming out. If I could get them to dance, I probably would. And you'd probably tell them to go play the sousaphone or something. But anyway.
Well, I worked with here's an example. I worked with an organization, and they have partnered. Really, they've just worked with this other organization for almost 30 years.
Okay.
And they never developed a relationship. It was always siloed. We do this, you do that. And they would talk some collaboration, but there'd always be resistance. We can't do this. We can't do, and I came in and went, time out. What are you looking to get? What is your end goal?
Mhm.
Here's our end goal. And we looked at it from a marketing standpoint, a branding standpoint of our nonprofit, a whole different look. How can we okay, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And we actually worked together, and this is the first time I actually put it pen to paper and actually wrote like kind of a memorandum of understanding just so we know what each other was getting. That was the best in 30 years. That was the best partnership both of those organizations have had.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that I did anything other than say, time out. You both, want something. Let's listen.
Absolutely. Yes. That's the whole saying. Listen 80%, talk 20.
I mean, I worked with somebody who would literally, say they would start this other organization would start the conversation, and I don't even know that he listened. He just shut it down. Like, no, we can't do that. We don't have the staff. No, let's listen to pause, time out.
You got to think else, so you said that and it's like, it was like a trigger. Don't blame it on lack of staff resources. That's where the creativity needs to come in. How can you get a volunteer in there to do it? How can you
Absolutely.
change? How can you scale in order to accomplish it? Think about and envision it happening versus putting up the stop sign and saying, "No, we can't do that." So I love that you say be open. Have an open mind about the possibilities. Stop saying impossible, but say possible. And I think they will travel so much more. So how do you strengthen some of these? I know one was listening to what each other needs. So how can we strengthen some of our partnerships?
I think some of it is you have to throw out the past relationships a little
Mhm.
bit. You have to say, let's start anew. Let's reinvent this. And that doesn't mean, you disengage. You just say, based on the way we've done things, let's shake it up. Let's do something different.
Mhm.
I tell every organization, I don't want to hear we do things a certain way because this is the way we've always done them. That
Where's my button? I have a button with the big red line through it. We've always done it this way. Oh my God.
that is not a thing I want to hear.
Absolutely. And we just talked about the pandemic. That is a key episode in the world that emphasized we can't do things the way we've always done them before. And if that didn't open up their eyes or make them understand that there are other ways of doing things and being successful, sometimes, and I don't, you might have run into it, but you have the founders that have been there like forever. And it's like trying to get the founder out of the way because, what can I say?
Yeah.
It's taking them and bringing them into this era of whether it's fundraising, management, development, programs, anything. So yes, actually, I mean, and you said it's a win for everyone, but I really like what you started out with by saying relationships aren't just about fundraising, because even though that might be one goal, another goal should be just getting their support, their engagement, their validation of who you are. Let them become an advocate for you. how great would it be if your Red Cross came out and said, well, we love the Pennsylvania cable network? It would be invaluable. So, I
Yeah.
mean, so do you have,
No,
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I think, that in combination with bring in, like actively search for folks that have not been part of the discussion before
Oh,
and bounce ideas. Don't come in with an agenda. Don't come in with the blank piece of paper, and just say,
let's just call it something else. Let's call it a strategy session or a brainstorming session.
yeah, like let's just come in and say, what do we want to achieve?
Yeah,
Okay, what do you guys want to achieve? How can we do that together?
yeah. How? Not why or it, how do we do it? And that, see, that's an action word. And it pushes them to say, okay, we've got to figure out how, not put up roadblocks, but how are we going to do it? And
And relationships are everyone in your organization's responsibility because
absolutely,
you never know who could be that donor
yeah, absolutely. And
or
that's
who knows who that connects
And
back to
that's
you.
why, because I also do training on the logic model, which is that whole framework of mapping out and showing your outcomes, your impact, and everything in between for your programs. And my little soapbox is you need to get everyone in the organization trained on it. Even though it's the program director that might lead that charge, everyone in the organization needs to understand the entire program from start to finish. What's the problem and what's the impact? Because marketing needs it to create their narrative. You can use it as in a board packet to recruit new board members. You need it in finances to map out your budget. You can use it in fundraising also for your language and to attract awareness and retain donors. That's another one of my little soapboxes. I know I'm on my soapboxes today. I better go wash some clothes because I'm gonna get old. Okay, do you have any last tips or advice? And then make sure you tell everybody how to reach you.
Um, I think I'm just going to keep stressing it is, look at your mission, look at other organizations, and really just think, how can you better serve the people that you're affecting or that you want to affect or that you want to impact?
Yes. And how can you do it? Because I'm gonna use your word, collaboration and relationships. How can you build those out there?
And eliminate this won't work. You don't want any of those negative kind of, if there's an obstacle, you figure you
How?
work in that ideal situation. Like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
How do you
How are
work
we going to
backwards?
get past it? Not can we? How are we going to do it? I absolutely love the framework that you're in. So how can people reach you? What if they want to talk to you? Get your service.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also email me at lifesynergist@gmail.com. I will be glad to listen and give advice or, talk through any situation. One of the things I learned, especially when coming to this role, is that from a fundraising standpoint, there's a whole lot that I didn't know when getting into this role. And, there's a whole lot of stuff out there and you're kind of like, okay, what is what? So I have a great friend who he and I kind of talk through and text on a daily basis. Like, have you saw this? Did you see, and I that has led me to my involvement with the Association of Fundraising Professionals and really being involved because fundraisers are oftentimes put out on an island and say, do this,
Yeah.
go fundraise.
The
I don't want
magicians.
I don't want anyone out on that island. Like, I want people to know you're not alone. Like, we'll
Absolutely.
we'll work through this together. So if you need ideas or just need someone to run something by or just say, I don't even know what I'm doing. This is like, email me. Like, I'd
Absolutely.
love to talk and hear that
I
and
will
work
make
through it.
sure that all of your contact information is not only in the description, but it's going to be flying by in the footer here as people are watching it. If they're just listening, make sure you read the description and the all of the details about this podcast because all of these links and connections will be there. You're from the great state of Pennsylvania. I just want to say the little book sitting behind me, Linda Lysakowski. That's called Board Bound Leadership. She's my co-author. She's from Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and she is Advanced Certified Fundraising Executive. She is one of the associations, one of the biggies, So
Wow.
when you said Pennsylvania, I said, I know somebody from there. She's out here now, but fabulous. Thank you so much. You were dropping nuggets and we had mic drops and all of that stuff. I hope the organizations and the sector out there, when you're listening to this, you're taking notes because this is great advice. Get out of your own way. That's my last word. Okay, this has been the Nonprofit Corner podcast with your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd, and we will see you next time.